Welcome back to the basement. Today I'm going to be talking mainly about remote ID and exchange I had with someone who made some comments on a previous video. Before I do that though, I'm going to put up a picture now and show you a test board that I put together yesterday that has on it a motor, an ESC, AR637T receiver, a spare one I happen to have laying around. I'm fortunate, actually, to have a spare one these days. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 servos, ailerons, elevator, rudder, and flaps. And I'm going to be using this to make some videos in the future about particularly safe and some of the issues with the AR637T and similar transmitters that have gyros in them. And hopefully help you guys understand how those things work a little better and some of the issues with them and some of the nice things they'll do as well. But today is mainly about remote ID. So here I am back live again. Ta-da! And I want to talk about this little guy here. That's my Holy Stone remote ID module. Okay, put it back there. Careful to disguise my registration and serial number. Okay, I bought this actually about a month ago. Got it on sale, an introductory price off of Amazon. You can also buy it direct from Holy Stone and from, I think, quite a few other outlets. And I'll tell you, it's not the only solution that's available. But it's really nice because it's relatively inexpensive. It works and it's self-contained with its own battery. So it's you put a little Velcro in a model, a little Velcro on the back of the module, and you can move it around very quickly and easily. One push of a button, it's activated. And I've tested it as shown in my video. It works just fine. It fulfills the minimum requirements under Part 107 of the Federal Air Regulations. Now, after I put that video up, I had a comment from one of my loyal fans, and I may not be a loyal fan anymore. It may not be a fan at all. But anyway, this individual claimed that I didn't need that remote ID because the FAA has no constitutional authority to regulate air commerce under any circumstances. Part 107, Part 123, Part 93, whatever, they have no right to regulate my behavior. Huh. Well, I'm going to put some links up in the comments, and I'll show them here up top, to two sites. One is the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. The other is a legal site, which will explain, if you care to follow those links, how the FAA has that constitutional authority under current law. Now, there's two kinds of law. There's enacted law and case law. And under both the Federal Air Regulations as enacted by the FAA under authority from the Congress and the executive branch of the federal government and approved by the courts, at least to date, they do have the authority, in fact, to regulate your personal behavior. They have the right to regulate airlines. They have the right to regulate aircraft manufacturers. They have the right to regulate pilots, mechanics, and quite a few other aspects of domestic U.S. aviation. Now, why would this person claim that? That's a good question. I suppose maybe he isn't familiar with the law, or he's just pissed off about Part 107 and the limitations it may have put on his personal behavior. So why did we even get Part 107? I mean, Part 93, Part 123, which is that's basically charter operations. Why? What were they thinking about? Well, and this all started back in the 30s, before we had any regulation. There was mounting evidence that people were doing things that were contrary to the welfare of others. crashing a lot and doing dangerous stuff, no regulation, no minimum requirements for pilots, yada, yada, yada. So we started down this regulatory path. The FAA was later created from the CAA and codified in the federal, they codified their federal air regulations. Now, the FAA and a lot of other regulatory bodies in this country are not specifically authorized by the Constitution. Outstanding examples: Security and Exchange Commission, the Federal Drug Administration, the FDA, maybe the Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Reserve is probably authorized because they deal with currency, but they do other things too. They regulate banks, and they can, in fact, declare a bank to be insolvent and force a merger. I don't, that's maybe not under the Constitution, because the Constitution does mention money. But in any event, there are a lot of other regulatory agencies of the federal government that are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution. However, the Constitution has the Commerce Clause, gives the at least under current court interpretations, gives the Congress the right to broadly regulate commerce. That includes the FAA. The FAA does involve commerce. It involves aircraft sales, aircraft service. It involves pilots flying for money or even for not for money. And I have lived under those regulations since I was 19 years old. Imagine a world without the FAA. Well, I can't as a pilot in today's busy airspace. The scope of aviation has grown significantly since the Wright brothers became the first ones to fly. At Kitty Hawk, they didn't have to worry about colliding with another airplane because there weren't any others. They did have to worry about maybe colliding with a bird, but especially around a seashore. But at any rate, we now have millions of flights a week around the world. We have, in this country, I think about 500,000 active pilots, including me. And as a pilot, I can definitely appreciate the FAA monitoring my flights on radar and by ADS-B. I am an IFR current and qualified pilot. I just took an IFR trip back from Atlanta, Georgia. I was in the clouds about half the time. And I very much appreciate the FAA following me on radar, monitoring other traffic, maintaining traffic separation in the clouds where I can't see 100 yards so that nobody else runs into me while I'm in those clouds. I think that is absolutely essential for safe transportation of me and my passengers. I appreciate the FAA's regulation of aircraft airworthiness, the annual inspection requirement, regulating the mechanics, making sure that they are educated and skillful in maintaining the airplanes that I fly, the avionics techs that maintain the radios, the FAA traffic control procedures and personnel and their training have all combined to make flying infinitely safer than we would be without any regulation. I appreciate the fact that I am not allowed to just go fly over O'Hare Airport at 200 feet. That there's Class B airspace there that if I fly into without permission, I can be violated and lose my license. I appreciate that. I don't mind it at all because I don't want other people flying private airplanes into O'Hare while United is landing and taking off with me in the airplane. But why did we even get Part 107? I mean, for many, many, many years, our little airplanes flying around willy-nilly mostly at little local airfields that are only suitable for remote controlled airplanes weren't causing too many problems. Yeah, we occasionally crashed an airplane into a building or maybe even a car, and I am aware of at least 3 fatal accidents involving uh, us guys flying our little airplanes around. There's one in Australia, one in England, and one in New York State, and I'll put some links to that in the description. But at any rate, the hobby was always very, very safe for the most part until quadricopters, classic drones. Just call them drones and call what we fly RC aircraft. When the drones started to become available with cameras and video recording equipment, concerns started to be raised about safety because these drones can take off and land from virtually anywhere, including other people's private property, public lands, yada, yada, yada. And they can record activities on the ground and bring that recording back to the operator of the drone, and he or she is free to use that any way they want to. They can surveil a neighborhood looking for potential victims of burglaries. In a very personal case, one of my daughters was being surveilled by a neighbor while she was out in the backyard. She called the police. They came out and had a conversation with that neighboring property owner, and those flights stopped, thank goodness, without any further repercussions. In my opinion, the regulations that we have today are the result of these quadricopters and their video recording abilities. Now, quadricopters are also going to become more prevalent as companies develop things like autonomous package delivery. There's a company that is currently researching and developing quadricopter swarms equipped with tanks holding liquid products, herbicides and insecticides that can be used potentially to replace fixed-wing airplanes flying over fields spraying chemicals. Some uses like that are starting to come along as well. But in any event, the random nature of these flights, the ability to record video, violate people's privacy, I think was the underlying reason why us Part 107 pilots flying our little turbo timbers off of a grass strip became regulated. I think the FAA was looking for a way to confine us to particular areas, thus the FRIA and altitude restrictions to keep us from, particularly around airports, and I hope we get those freed up a little bit. AOPA has been very much in favor of these. AMA has fought them, some of the more restrictive regulations, and has managed to make some progress on that. One of the great things they did, in my opinion, was not forcing this equipment we have to broadcast the position of the pilot. I think there were also some other reasons, including some videos that were posted of people flying drones well beyond line of sight and using the onboard cameras for navigation. Cases of drones that were up at night without lights on that were observed. Things like that that came to force, and I don't say force, but came to give the FAA the moral authority to start to regulate us. Do I like it? No. I think they've gone too far in some cases. But as a private pilot, I can appreciate that these drones are restricted now somewhat, and I feel less threatened by the potential for driving into one of those in my Cessna 182. Uh, so where do I come out on all of this? Really, as a pilot, private pilot, I can understand what the FAA is doing. As a drone pilot, I chafe at it. I don't think that the airplanes that I fly, at least, are a significant public danger. Uh, most of them, almost everything I have, except for my one DJI, needs a runway, or at least an open area to take off and land. Uh, and I like the idea of belonging to a club. I like it so much. I belong to two that will have facilities for this. We have clubhouses, we have power out there for battery chargers, uh, things that we need to fly and fly safely. We have rules and regulations for those airstrips that under AMA guidelines, and I think those are their guidelines are not rule of law, but I think they're really a good idea, helping keep us safe. Don't always succeed in doing that. Actually, a few years ago, actually quite a few years ago, but 30 years, 35 years ago now, I was flying a model airplane at a local flying club, and somebody lost control of one of their airplanes, crashed into the parking lot, hit a guy, he fell and broke shoulder. And we had to get him to the hospital. He sued us, as he should have probably, even though he implicitly acknowledged by being there the danger of this, but he sued the flying club, and they wound up giving him all the money they had in the treasury and disbanding. It's an unfortunate incident, but it happened. And I was there that day, amazingly. So, yeah, I can appreciate the need for some regulation. So with that, I'm going to close. Hopefully we'll get some decent flying weather here in Indiana in the not too distant future. We haven't had, well, we have had a couple of days, but I will happen to not be in town those days, and I haven't flown a model except a few glider flights at the local school for a couple of months now. So I've been out to one of the flying fields. So with that, I will close and hope that you have a great summer flying. I intend to, and hope that this helps balance the view a little bit on the remote ID controversy. Thank you very much for watching, and if you like this, subscribe, but please don't leave any comments about the constitutionality of the FAA, at least under current court decisions that can always change, but right now they clearly have the authority to do what they do, like it or not. Thank you and goodbye.